Hello, I am here with Miss Green,
Hello.
and I did an observation of Miss Green about a week ago. Miss Green, you are a first year teacher, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so how's it going so far? What do you
Um,
think so far?
it's going good for the most part. I think that it's also me getting to know like new faces, especially with U.S. history. We go through a complete shift. Um, Second semester, so I am getting students from other teachers. So it is also me getting them students accustomed to how I teach class and getting them accustomed to how they should be working and my work expectations in my classroom.
Okay, okay. Well, as I said, you did a lesson, or I observed your lesson. The lesson was on the Holocaust. What was your goal with this lesson, and what do you, or how do you think the students benefited from this lesson?
All right, so my overall goal focused on the United States rather than focusing on Germany and the Nazis and Hitler. It was essentially had the main question of when should the United States have intervened with the Holocaust. So the overall purpose was to get students to critically think about when would you intervene when you see something like this going on in today's world. So they had to develop a claim related to the evidence within the slideshows. They also had to give evidence. They chose the evidence from the slide deck, and with the evidence process, you have to specifically cite the evidence. And they also had to give me reasoning to how their evidence relates to the claim. So they go through that process. They go through two evidence and two reasonings. For benefit, my goal was for them to see how it connects to today's world. After this lesson, some students came up to me the next class and was like, Miss Green, well, I see the connection now. And I was like, well, that's good. And they told me, they said, it still is happening today, just in a different perspective. And I said, I know. And that is what I'm trying to get you all to understand.
Okay, okay. Now these were some things I thought were your strengths in the lesson. I wrote a lot of this down. You walked around, you were asking questions. I liked your proximity. You know, you would stand by certain students, and I like that. You walked up and down each aisle. You asked the question, how would you feel if you had to walk 66 hours to escape to freedom? And then the students, they were able to, I just wrote down a couple of words that they said. Some of them would feel sleepy, confused, depressed, and although those are just one word comments, as I kept listening, I would hear, they would talk more about how they would feel, and it was more than just one or two words. So I like that. I like the way it sparked conversation. It sparked conversation. And then I just wrote down here. You would ask what kind of shoes did they have in 1944 in the 1940s? Some type we have some. Do we have the same type today? May not have been as comfortable as the shoes we have today. Let's see. Challenges he might. Okay, you asked what are the challenges this person may face, and someone said racism. So I thought that was good. Walk and stay in secret. If he gets caught, he could be executed. Okay. Student asked, why is he walking, Miss Green? And he said, to get to freedom. And again, as he's walking, he's walking in secret. And if he gets caught, he could be executed. And another one that I circled here, the student said, kind of like Harriet Tubman, huh? And you said yes and no. She smuggled people, but she wasn't a free person. like the Germans were. Um, So, excuse me, what do you think your strengths were with this lesson?
My strengths with this lesson was definitely more student involvement, I would say, or student engagement. It is also me not letting them get away with just giving me a yes or no answer within the classroom. And they may get mad at me, and I really do not care. I always ask them why. Like,
Yeah.
you need to go more into detail of
Yeah.
why you are telling me this answer. And I also think that one of the strengths is, although I do not know like every aspect of history, I think that a strength is being able to connect it back to some event within history, whether it be something that they are familiar with or something that is not familiar with. And I think that another strength is being able to connect it back to specific racial and ethnic groups, because once they see themselves or their ancestors within that specific position, just in a different time frame or a different circumstance, then they will become more involved within what we are learning now.
Okay. Where do you think you need to grow
I think
as far as this lesson goes? Where do you think you need to grow?
I think I need to grow with having more student involvement, especially like having them bring out a discussion question or formulate a discussion question, and having the entire class focus on that discussion question rather than me putting out a discussion question, because then it will make them even more involved within their learning, and it will allow them to be able to grasp the content better. And it would also like check off all the boxes that I need when they are looking at getting students involved and doing trainer talks.
Okay. Well, it's funny you should say that, because let me see. Oh, okay. That's what I was going to ask you too. Okay, so you told me about where you need to grow, and I was going to tell you about. You mentioned Turn and Talk. So a few weeks ago, we had a presenter to present to our faculty about the topic of Turn and Talk. What did you think of that presentation? What did you think of the presenter when it comes to Turn and Talk? Because really, that's what I had down here for you to grow in. And it's funny you should mention you felt like you need to grow in that, and that's what I had put down. Turn and Talk. So, what do you think of the presentation?
For the presentation that happened a couple of weeks ago, I think it was beneficial and not at the same time. I think it was beneficial in the way of giving us ideas on how to incorporate Turn Talks, and like telling us that it doesn't have to be a content related topic at first, just get students interested within the idea of Turner Talks. However, I feel like it may not have been beneficial in the aspect that a lot of the times with the Turner Talks, they just completely take out the writing step. And I think that is a crucial factor for our students to get their thoughts in order before they actually are able to turn and talk to their neighbor. I also think that they could have more explicitly stated like the entire time that we should give students. I do think that 1 minute is way too long for high school students, essentially because after like 10 to 20 seconds, they stop talking about the content and they start talking about what they're doing after school, which is not content related at all.
Right.
I think for the purpose of this presenter, it was mainly focused on adults. Like us adults can talk about a content or what we're supposed to do for a minute, but how do we implement that within the high school setting?
So you think maybe like instead of a minute, give them a minute, instead of giving them a minute for Turn and Talk, maybe 30 seconds, Turn and Talk.
And then they'll switch, and then the next person will do their talking. I think 30 seconds might be the sweet point, because it just gives them right enough time to actually say what they are thinking about the content, and not extra time to say what are we doing after school, and for any disagreements to take place.
Okay. So I felt like I've already asked you what you felt like you need to grow in, but if we could do more turn and talk, and then instead of teacher-led discussions, maybe if you could work on student-led discussions a little bit, just where you're not always facilitating, and I'm sure you do that. But I was just saying in that particular lesson, that's when I saw the teacher-led. But let's try to work on maybe a little more student-led discussion. Next steps, I'd probably like to meet with you one more time if I could. I'd like to meet with you one more time, and then if you could tell me how do you think we can connect these lessons to other units that you might be studying in history.
Yeah. All right. So with this specific lesson, or within this specific unit, we are focused on the 4 freedoms and the U.S. involvement within WW2. So that is within this specific. That was one part of the lesson within this unit. The next part was the Japanese entertainment, like the entertainment of the Japanese people. So it is highly focused on different ethnic groups and how they were during the war, and what the U.S. did to help these specific groups, or in the Japanese case, how the U.S. excluded them. This is connected to the other units because the other units we just continue to have a chronological order. So this part of history connects to what is taking place next, which is going to be the civil rights movement. Just because, one, it follows the timeline, and two, it is also a good point to see how the Japanese detainment connects to the civil rights movement, because technically Japanese were also had to go through segregation and exclusion within the community, and students will be able to see that within another racial ethnic group for the next unit, which is African Americans being segregated in the Jim Crow laws and having to actually stay on their tippy toes when being surrounded by other people.
Okay. So I think that's all I have. What questions do you have of me?
One question that I have for you is, so when you do come to visit, like, what are, in specifics, are you looking for? I know that you told me the growth, but what are some of the specifics that you are looking for when you come to observe?
Okay. And probably what we should have done the last time, Ms. Green, we can sit down with a plan, and we can plan it as far as the lesson and as far as what I need to see in the lesson. So I think it was a lot of what we talked about, though. A lot of what we talked about. But that's what we'll do. I'd like to see you one more time, and we will sit down and we will go over, what I would like to see in this lesson. And a lot of times I think too, though, Ms. Green, I'm trying to think of what it's even called, but what do the students need? Yeah, what do the students need in this lesson? Or, like we just asked, what do you think the student, or how do you think the students benefited? So that's what we'll do. We'll just come up with, I'll look at the next lesson and then just go from there.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So there's nothing else?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Green,
welcome.
and I'll see you the next time.
All right.
Okay.